This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. It shows we're going to mandate. Get it on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus in Palm Springs.
You look how astute you are in your observational skills. All you see is wallpaper, and you know.
Yeah, Gary told me you're in Palm Springs.
Here I thought I was giving you a clue.
I know.
A little shout out.
But now you know I cannot tell a lie. So, Mark, I know there's a lot of stuff going on this week, so let's just jump right into it. Where do you want to start?
Well, as Gary and I were setting up here, the judge ruled that he's not going to delay George Chauvin's trial. And Derek. The defense... Derek, you're right, Chauvin's trial. And the defense had asked for a delay or a change of venue based on the announcement of the $27 million settlement. Turns out that as they were having the hearing today, the city or some of the city members were doing a press conference as well, which I think annoyed this judge immensely, who keeps saying, I wish they'd just keep their mouths shut. And he admitted that he may have had some judicial bias in that he didn't think the announcement of the settlement would affect jurors. And already he's had to excuse two of the jurors based on the fact that they had heard about it and it did make them believe that they couldn't be fair, but has denied the motion for change of venue and has denied the motion to continue. But in a I think, very significant development, he has now ruled that he's going to allow in the circumstances around George Floyd's 2019 arrest. And I think Gary's got part of that body cam. Don't you, Gary?
Yeah, we'll look at that when we'll listen to it. What is the giving the settlement, the $27 million bucks? What is the strategy? I know you spoke about it. It's to try to appease the sort of mob, but it does make it more difficult in terms of executing the trial, just weeks later. Is it an intentional strategy? Did they think about how it would affect the trial?
They claim, they meaning somebody from the city, that they talked to the chief judge, the state court judge, who gave them the go-ahead. The trial judge has stated on the record that he denies that. Frankly, that would be an ex parte communication anyway, which I think would be somewhat inappropriate. But having said that, it's awfully reminiscent of what then DA Jackie Lacey did on the first day of Harvey Weinstein's trial, where she announced the charges in California. I always say, if you've got 365 days and you pick a certain day and it happens to be right in the middle of jury selection, that does not seem to me to be coincidental. And by the way, I think the judge also mentioned today, it's his understanding that the settlement isn't even finalized yet, that it's still subject to the federal court's approval, which makes a whole lot of sense. And if that's the case, then it's inexplicable as to why they decided right now in the middle of jury selection to make that announcement. It could cut either way. I could make an argument that it doesn't help the prosecution. You could make an argument that, somebody, if they're on the fence, would say to themselves, well, the family's got 27 million reasons why they should be happy. And, I may vote not guilty. Yeah. As the defense lawyer, it would drive me crazy because I would say $27 million, the largest pre-litigation settlement of a civil rights case, can't have anything but a deleterious effect. And that's what the judges found in practice.
Do you have that tape from 2019?
I do. I just wanted to go ahead and set this up that the tape in full is about 12 to 15 minutes, depending on which news outlet you use. We have isolated about 45 seconds. That is the portion that Mark has thoughts and wants to comment on. So I'll play that now.
And this is admissible now.
Correct.
Yeah, he's ruled that he's going to admit this.
Why? Why did he rule that?
I think he's trying to. Are we going to start, Gary? I'll tell you. This is what I think. The argument is by the defense that that George Floyd has got a modus operandi, and his modus operandi is to ingest the whatever he's carrying, and that would be the reason for the death. So they're going to say that this is admissible to show whenever he gets pulled over by the police, he ingests whatever drug he has on him.
Okay, well, let's see it, and then we'll get into the questions.
Put your hands on the dash. The last time I'm going to tell you that. It's simple. I got you. He keeps moving his hands around. He won't listen to what I have to say.
Put your hands on
Okay.
top of your head.
Put them on your head.
Top of your head.
Okay, man.
Open your mouth. Spit out what you got. Spit out what you got. I'm going to tase you. Spit it out. He's eating all
Don't you
kinds
jerk
of
away
stuff.
from me.
That was one yellow pill.
Put your hands behind your
That was one yellow pill, boss.
Okay, now slowly come on out.
Hand
Now put your
hand under your head.
Okay, relax then. You're not going to get beat up or nothing if you just follow what we're asking you to do.
So it's a little hard to hear there, but about 15 or 20 seconds into that, you hear the cop shouting at him to spit out what you got. They had seen him put something into his mouth after they had made contact with him, and they were telling him to spit it out or they were going to tase him.
Right. So
it sounds like you hear something where I thought I heard it's just a little yellow pill.
yes,
By hearing things.
that's what he said.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I want your reaction to having seen that, and put yourself in the jury and tell me what your reaction to that is once you see that.
Well, my reaction, I would sort of toggle back and forth between the case we all have seen footage of, or the case we're discussing in front of us, and then this thing that happened, a year and a half earlier? I don't know. How was this? It could have been 9 months earlier. I don't know, Gary, what the date was of this, but I don't know if it was 1 year earlier. So I would be saying he seemed so completely out of it in a fugue state when they were trying to get him into the cruiser in the case that we're now deliberating, if I'm a juror. He seemed so insanely out of control. Could he have been that way when he walked into the convenience store and tried to pass the $20 bill or whatever the story was? So I don't know. So it's been 14 months, or I don't know what the date. I don't know what the.
It'd be about 22 months since the video.
22 months?
Well, May 2021, 2 months from now, right?
Well, this happened in 2020.
2020.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking about the date of the video we just watched, which was in
Yeah,
May
no, I
6th.
want to know how far the two things were apart.
They're about 12 months.
A year apart. Okay. So a year earlier, he did this, and then I would speculate that if he was in good enough condition to kind of walk into the convenience store and try to do whatever, he was a condition, that when the cops rolled up on him, maybe he did this thing again. Maybe he ingested these drugs that were on him, and thus that's why he sort of went nuts when they were trying to get him into the squad car, because he seemed completely out of his mind at that point. Was he completely out of his mind when he was walking into the convenience store? Now, I don't know if there's video surveillance footage, but if I was the defense, I would say, well, look at him. He walked down the street. He walked into the store. He had a conversation with the guy behind the counter. He got some Mentos. He walked out. Then when he saw the cops, he did what he does. He's always carrying. He took all the drugs and shoved them in his mouth. And then at some point, when they were trying to get him into the car, the drugs kicked in. He went berserk. And now what are we to do?
And then you've got the notes from the coroner, which says, if he had been found at home, I would have ruled it as an accidental overdose, which the coroner, I assume, is not going to run away from. And you combine those things, and it becomes a harder decision for the defense as to whether they put Chauvin on the stand. Now you've got a narrative that you can tell that you could raise a reasonable doubt. And so far, given the jurors who have been selected, this thing lines up for a hung jury, I think, as of right now. I still do not understand why the prosecution is fighting against a continuance at this point. If I were them, I would embrace a continuance. If they really want a conviction, I'm perplexed.
Why would you embrace a continuance?
If I'm the prosecution, I need to deal with this 2019, and I need to recalibrate, so to speak. And I may want a different jury. I'm not so sure that if they were picking the jury, part of what you have to do, the analysis you do when you're picking a jury, is what does the evidence look like? That video, to me, it really depends on the prism that you're looking through. I mean, I can see somebody who would look at that video and say, oh, what are these cops doing? Why do they have to threaten tasing somebody sitting in a car who's not doing anything? I could see another person looking at it and saying quite the opposite. And so I would have wanted to have that piece of information in my brain as I'm questioning people and looking at their questionnaire. Well, it makes a big difference to me.
If I'm the defense, whether there's footage of him popping pills in his mouth or whatever it is, I just go, here's this guy's history. When cops, he's always carrying drugs, and when cops roll up on him, he swallows all the drugs. This is a drug overdose case. He essentially poisoned himself by taking enough fentanyl to kill an elephant all at once. You know, maybe he was walking around carrying it and he was going to take it throughout the day. But when the cops showed up, he threw it all in his mouth. The coroner report's clear. He would have called it overdose death. And he's right. That's what he did. He essentially poisoned himself.
Right. But that's, that could be two old white guys who view it through our prism. There is a argument, and I could see where there would be jurors who would say, this is typical of what the cops do. They always deflect and assassinate the character and blah, blah, blah. My point, I guess, is if I'm the prosecutor, this is not helpful in the least to the case. And I think I remember that and this is what it reminds me in some weird ways of OJ jury selection. Marcia, and she gets mad at me whenever I say this, but Marcia always took the position that, she had such great success and she did. It's unequivocal that she had great success when she was in hardcore at the DA's office with African-American jurors. And she got convictions when nobody was getting convictions in the criminal courts building. But that did not translate into the OJ case. And people didn't prosecutors, I don't think, or underestimated the narrative of race and the fact of race. And that is something you have to consider.
Now, as far as Marcia Clark and the success in the African-American community, I got to say it's in large part due to her Jerry curl that she used to wear. She looked like a young Eric Dickerson out there. So that could have been it.
How many people listening to this or watching this are going to have any idea what you're talking about when you say that?
That's the beauty of me.
That's about as inside baseball as there's ever been. First of all, Eric Dickerson's look, and then Marcia's look pre the makeover.
I know.
Marcia, I love you. If somebody clips this and sends it to you, I love you, and I've always said you're one of the great trial lawyers, and I'm not hammering you. I'm just making my observation, which I know you disagree with.
And as a Rams fan, I can tell you, being compared to the great Eric Dickerson is never a slap in the face.
Yeah, can you name the number of yards for that breakthrough season of his?
Well, he went over 2,000, and I think, ironically, I think he beat OJ's record when he went over 2,000.
I'm pretty sure too. And wasn't it like I'm thinking 2017, but Gary?
I was thinking 2018. I have no idea why, but now Jerry Curl.
You're welcome.
I stand by my Jerry curl assertion. I mean, they both have the same hairdo. I would, if I was in the African American community and somebody walked in with that kind of Jerry curl, I would be more prone to vote their way. Yes, we'll put this up. Where do we put it up on?
Oh, well, you can go watch on YouTube and you'll see that, or it'll be up at reasonabledoubtpodcast.com. Some of my finest work.
I would say it's the exact same haircut. I wouldn't say it's a marginally different haircut. I would say it is nuts and bolts the same haircut.
I would agree. Now I'll start working on what year those yards were run.
Okay. So, yes, you're all welcome for my observation. Now, the thing that's comical is Marcia Clark now has straight hair and Eric Dickerson has no hair. So they're both as far away from their previous hair as they could get.
The Smithsonian, when you pass, needs to embalm your brain and somehow, hopefully by then, in 50 years from now, there's a way to push on the brain at certain points and get these insights.
Well, thank you. That is high praise from someone with a brain who should also go next to my brain in the Smithsonian. 2,105 yards Eric Dickerson had.
21-5. Wow.
Yeah.
I would have sworn it was 20-something.
I would have thought
I wouldn't have gone 21.
Too, but and I think he broke OJ's record in 1984. So this is, again, a full circle conversation. Now, if I was the defense, if I was the prosecution in the Chauvin trial, I would take the drug argument and I would steer it back at them. I would say, clearly this person is on something. Clearly this person is out of their mind. Clearly this person's incapable of instructions, and you threw them on the ground and put a knee on their neck.
I'm teasing that for after this. Geico.
Yeah.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. I bet it can be hard work. You know it is. I mean, I always say owning a home is like being a janitor. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. Go to Geico, GEICO.com, get a quote, see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit Geico today. That's Geico.com. You know, it's interesting that Geico is a sponsor because I read something about Warren Buffett as a young man going to the Geico offices and basically talking his way in so that he could meet the CEO. And he met, I guess, or had an audience with the assistant of Geico. And it changed the arc or trajectory of his investments. And now today, his Berkshire Hathaway owns Geico 100%. I thought that was an interesting little vignette. Sorry about that, to Gary.
All right. So you were going to address the prosecution. I
worry if you are a cheerleader for the prosecution, that they don't understand that it's too nimble or nuanced of a feat for them. The idea that the prosecution would embrace a bad fact and turn it against them, I'm just not so sure they're adept at that, because clearly what you have argued is what I constantly argue in these wrongful death civil rights cases that we have in the office, that in 80% of those cases, you've got a PTSD Afghan or Iraq war veteran who is now a cop who gets triggered very easily. And then you've got somebody with a mental illness or a mental challenge. And instead of de-escalating the situation, they escalate it. And they escalate it because they're coming from a viewpoint where that's basically all they know how to do, and the municipality doesn't train them well. And so, and you can hit these guys for verdict after verdict if you can ever get past qualified immunity, and it doesn't matter because they don't learn. And if they don't learn, how's the prosecution going to learn? And the prosecution, by the way, just has so little aptitude for prosecuting cops that they looked inept, or they look inept when they do it.
Well, in this case, if you're the prosecution and you don't want to lean into the drug use, you're going to have a hard time getting away from it because of the coroner's report, right? So
correct, and this doubles down on it.
Right. So
this meaning the 2019.
Right, that arrest. So the defense is going to bang that drum over and over and over again, that this was a drug overdose. And so you're not going to be able to get away from the drugs because of the two aforementioned situations we just talked about. So if you can't get away from them, I would lean into them and go, yeah, he was an addict. He had a problem. He needed help. He didn't need a knee on his neck. He needed help. And you guys did not offer that help. You exacerbated it.
You exacerbated it, and you were the proximate cause of his death by having the knee on there. And by the way, the 2019, if you're a prosecutor, you obviously don't want it in. But now that you know that it's coming in whole or in part, you need to deal with that. And the way to deal with that, as you say, is to lean in, but to lean in a couple of different ways. Number one is, as you said, look, this guy is compliant. He was, here you go. Same thing a year before. What does it show you? It shows you that he's compliant. He wasn't fighting. He put his arm around. Did he do it as quickly as the cops wanted him to? Of course not, because the cops are always in a high state of agitation, and that's how they act. But by the way, he readily admitted, I just took what did he say? A little yellow pill?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the fact that he so readily admitted that, and the fact that he was fairly compliant, and the fact that there was also the white versus African American on the previous tape. You can't get away from that. Once again, it's a white officer who's pulling a guy out of his car who's doing nothing but minding his own business as he's sitting in a passenger seat. I've never understood why that requires all of this hullabaloo and escalating it to DEFCON 5. That if you live in certain challenged areas and have had the experience, you're going to say to yourself, why are we raising this thing up to a level like this? Why didn't we just tell the guy, step out of the car, put your hands behind your head, and boom? And do we have to scream and yell? And, it reminds me of some of your observation on other tapes we've had where the command officer is going crazy, yelling out commands.
Now, we're going to allow this tape from 2019 into the body of evidence. Does this mean we've opened the door for other transgressions vis-a-vis the law? And
this
George
is
Floyd?
This is where the defense lawyer is going to be doing some calibrations, depending on how that jury looks. And by the way, he's going to be doing some. Eric Nelson, I believe, is his name, and so far, I think he's done a better than workmanlike job. I mean, he's talented, and he spots the issues, and he's right there, and he doesn't back down. And he does what a good criminal defense lawyer does. He holds the prosecution accountable. That's their job. That's our job. So he's going to be doing constant calibrations. First of all, what does my jury look like? Do I have a shot at an acquittal? Because I can't tell you the number of times that I picked a jury and I knew I had no shot at an acquittal. And I've often said, you've heard me say it, I don't care if you reanimate Disney-style Clarence Darrow. You're not going to change 20, 30, 40, 50 years worth of somebody's life experiences over the course of a trial. They're going to look at the thing the way they're conditioned to look at the evidence. So you should know, if you are an observer of the human condition, whether or not you're ever going to be able to sell your narrative, your version of what happened to these particular jurors. If you're not, if you make the determination, I've made this determination probably 50 times, and I've probably had, I've never tallied it, but I would say I have in excess of 50 hung juries out of all the trials I've done. And usually I know when I'm aiming for a hung jury, and when I'm aiming for a hung jury, meaning I know I'm not going to get an acquittal, you tailor your arguments to the jurors that are going to hold their ground. One of the questions I often ask in jury selection is, I'll say, look, ladies and gentlemen, if I want you to fast forward 6 weeks from now after you've been sitting in this trial, the judge has told you to go deliberate. It's Friday at 3:00. That's the bewitching hour for jurors. You're the one. It's 11-1 against you. I don't care which way you're voting. Are you going to hold your ground as that one juror? Or are you going to just say, hey, I'm not coming back here on Monday. I'm out of here. I'm just going to change my vote. And that is a very telling question, and more importantly, answer that you want to hear. Because if you get people who say, no, I wouldn't change, I understand what my oath is, what my duty is, and by the way, there are jury instructions that tell them that's what they're supposed to do, and you're aiming for a hung jury, there may be a world in which Chauvin does not take the stand because the defense thinks that they don't need him to. And that's helpful in a lot of ways, because remember, you always have the specter of the federal grand jury in the background here. And that's something you have to consider.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the federal grand jury. How does that factor in?
Let me tell you exactly how it factors in. Finally, today, somebody just sent me an article from USA Today, I believe. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But all of a sudden, it's clicked in people's heads that this trial could be reminiscent of the officers in Rodney King's case, right? Well, duh, we've been saying that how long on this show? Of course it's reminiscent. It's you couldn't get any more history repeating itself. In that case, once the officers got the change of venue to Simi Valley, I always say Silmar, but it was Simi Valley, and they were acquitted, then the feds came in and retried, and they got convictions on, I believe, 2 out of the 4. Now, here, the prosecutors know that. They know their history. DOJ has already convened, if you believe published reports, a federal grand jury that has apparently taken evidence. My guess is if there's an acquittal or a hung jury, they're ready to indict him almost immediately. Now, why is that important? That's important because if Chauvin takes the stand, his sworn testimony can be used against him in the federal case. And so you have to make a calculation. And by the way, if you don't think that these lawyers and Eric Nelson is making this calculation, let me give you one fact that will put the lie to that. Apparently, also what's been reported is there was a tentative plea deal for Chauvin where the state was offering 10 years, and he was willing to take that. However, his lawyer, and I'm assuming it's Nelson, I've never met him, I've never talked to him, so this is my opinion, but his lawyer wanted it to be wrapped up with federal coverage. He didn't want to plead in state court and then have his client marched over to federal court and doubly prosecuted. And apparently Bill Barr, as one of his final acts, rejected the idea of giving him coverage federally. That tells you all you need to know. You cannot have your client take the stand in the state case with the federal lurking in the background.
Well, I'm going to tease this because I got a spot, but I would imagine the feds would just be watching the trial, and if they get to the end of the trial and Chauvin is not found guilty, would they still make the decision to move ahead if they'd seen enough evidence to convince them that they essentially had the same case, which may not be a good case. I'm curious how that works. First, let me tell you about Audible. Leading provider of spoken word entertainment, largest selection of audiobooks, bestsellers, celebrity memoirs, languages, business, motivation, and more. Listen while you're working from home, cooking, exercising, walking the dog, or just relaxing. As a member, you get 1 credit every month, good for a title, and you can keep them forever in your Audible library. I would recommend Mistrial. Or one of my books.
Oh,
why the hell?
Narrated by Awesome Dawson.
Awesome Dawson. And my books, I narrate myself. Plus, they got podcasts, wellness programs.
That's because you're the hardest working guy in podcasting and voice. It's unbelievable. How could the idea of me sitting down and reading my book into an Audible thing is incomprehensible to me, and you do it just as routine.
Well, I have Awesome Dawson engineer my books. Also, there's comedy, there's exclusive audio originals, and new members can try Audible for 30 days and do it on us. Visit audible.com/RD or text RD to 500-500. That's audible.com/RD and try it out. So the feds, do the feds just move ahead with their case, or do they watch this case and decide? I mean, there may be things that come up in the case that would completely derail the feds case. Are there things?
No, and look, putting on my criminal defense hat, and I will say that I don't care which way you view this prosecution. However, there is something fundamentally un-American and undemocratic about the idea that you're getting kind of body checked by having the feds in the background. You know they've convened a grand jury. You know if you have any success, if you're a defendant, they can come in and basically clean up the prosecution by prosecuting you again. I just think that's fundamentally unfair. And by the way, I say this as someone who rarely defends cops. I mean, I always find that defending cops is akin to defending Republicans. No offense, but the idea of just from a due process point of view, I just find it to be offensive that you're telling me that I've got to worry. I mean, if I'm the client, can you imagine? And take Chauvin out of this. Just say it's somebody else who's being prosecuted. Some poor kid who's being beaten up by some prosecutorial bully in a prosecution. And I'm telling him, and he says, I want to take the stand. And I tell this poor kid, I don't want you to take the stand because the feds are watching. And if you make a misstep, and we could win the battle here, the state court case, and lose the war, the federal. Wouldn't most people say that makes no sense? That's unfair. That's a violation of double jeopardy. I always learned this in civics class.
It does feel like double jeopardy, and it also feels a little arbitrary. Like the feds are going to hang out, and there's some cases they're going to focus on, and then others they're not going to focus on. I mean, how does that work?
Well, that could be the subject of a complete show because, or 1 hour, because the idea of what attracts the attention and how decisions are made, you want to and you hope. And I would say in a lot of cases, most cases, that prosecutors try to do the right thing. I mean, I hope that if they didn't, I don't know how I'd sleep at night or get up in the morning. But there are outliers, and the outliers are what drive you crazy if you do the work that we do at the firm every day. The outliers are the people who, there is kind of a revolving door from U.S. attorneys' offices to large firms where a U.S. attorney will score a high-profile conviction, and before the ink is dry on the jury verdict, they've entertained an offer to leave the office and make a 7-figure salary at a large, big firm. That kind of revolving door, people talk about others, but there's something offensive about that.
Well, how does the Fed put on a case? I mean, if there is no new evidence after the first case, right? Or
Right.
maybe there is. I don't know.
Well, they this is the problem. In the federal criminal justice system, and I've talked with many a federal district court judge about this, jury trials are almost extinct. You're more likely to hit the lottery than to get a federal criminal jury trial. And there's a reason for that. Number one, the minute you go to trial, whatever offer that has been made is pulled off the table. And remember, prosecutors especially in the federal system, have complete control over what you're offered. Number two, if in a trial you want to take the stand and testify, well, guess what in federal court? If you testify and win, that's great. If you testify and lose, you've just violated the acceptance of responsibility. And most judges will not only lose 3 levels there, but God forbid they'll say you obstructed or did something else, and you get a little, as one ex-federal district court judge told me, you get tax, tip, and service charge. You get 5 levels on the sentencing guidelines. It's Russian roulette, literally, with. And I know some guys get mad when I say literally, but it is Russian roulette from a criminal justice standpoint. There are very few people who have the guts to challenge the feds in that system because the prosecutors hold so much power.
Well, let's get into some predictions. You think the trial that we're speaking about, not the federal trial, do we feel like that's a hung jury situation?
As of right now, and as we speak, I think they're still selecting, and there's still 2 spots open. And the judge has given a couple of extra peremptory challenges, I think, to the prosecution and maybe to the defense too. As of right now, it looks like a hung jury to me. That could change depending on who gets removed. Gary, he removed 2 people today. I think I sent you an update, right?
Yes, you did. That's
2
correct.
jurors?
That's on top of the 2 that were removed after last week's settlement announcement.
Well, if it's a hung jury like like Cosby, will they retry it?
Well, and that's interesting too. If it's a hung jury, will the state retry it? I think we have to wait and see how the prosecutors do. If the prosecutors do a workmanlike good job, then my money would be on that they would retry it. If it looks like the prosecution of George Zimmerman, which was a prosecutorial clown show, then I doubt it. I think the feds would just come in.
Do you think that Keith Ellison, who's the DA, who seems...
AG.
Oh, sorry, Attorney General, who does seems aspirations to move up and move on, do you think he would do it sort of like the AG of Pennsylvania or Philadelphia or whatever, who said, we're going to do a second round with Cosby? It would seem to be more of a political thing than a practical matter.
Yeah, Cosby's, we could talk for hours about that too. I mean, fundamentally the problem there was, how in the world does Bill Cosby do a deposition 15 years before, relying on the DA telling him that they're not going to prosecute him criminally, and then because some guy wins a DA's election, they renege on that promise and they use it against him. How the Pennsylvania appellate courts don't reverse that is beyond me.
So do you think Keith Ellison, for maybe political reasons, would do it again?
Maybe, but he may not have a choice. And we'll talk about that each week, because it really is going to depend on how it looks.
All right, let me hit relief ban. I'll tell you, nausea, no good, people, especially if it's self-induced, like a little too much Don Julio up on stage in Florida. I'm excited about our new
yes, and then pretzel bites,
pretzel bites. I'm excited about our new partner, Relief Band. Number one, FDA cleared anti-nausea wristband, clinically proven to relieve nausea and vomiting from motion sickness, morning sickness, chemotherapy, anxiety, hangovers, migraines, and more. Everyone, 100% drug-free, non-drowsy, fast-acting, all-natural relief with zero side effects, originally developed 20-plus years ago in hospitals. Now it's over the counter. It works, people. It seems like magic, but it works. Right, Dawson? Sorry. Right, Gary?
That's right.
Awesome, Dawson.
As the world's opening back up, don't let the fear of nausea keep you on the sidelines. Right now, Relief Band has an exclusive offer just for Reasonable Doubt listeners. If you go to reliefband.com and use promo code DOUBT, you'll receive 20% off plus free shipping and a no-questions-asked 30-day money-back guarantee. So head to reliefband.com and use our promo code DOUBT for 20% off plus free shipping.
All right, well,
in defense of Don Julio, let's defend Don. I'm going to start claiming that I was served a Mickey by that cute waitress at the pool bar, because that was not Don Julio.
That's right? True. That's true.
Yeah.
We're on the rooftop bar, and the cute waitress said she had something better than Don Julio.
Yeah, right.
Now, here's my feeling about that.
Yeah.
When somebody says, we have Don Julio, but I would like to serve you something better than Don Julio, I believe them. But if they say, we don't have Don Julio, but I have something better than Don Julio, now I don't believe them. See?
I'm with you. I've got a heart out. I apologize. Adam, I love you.
I love you. I got to catch a flight to Reno. So until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Mark Garrigus saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.